Welcome everybody to another episode of Landa Talks. We have an amazing guest today, Jeniffer Hernandez from Mexico, born and raised, right,
Yes.
Jennifer? I would just like to start maybe with you introducing yourself. Who is Jennifer? What's been your background so far? You are doing consulting for about 3 years now, so maybe give
Yes.
us a glimpse on what's your niche right now, who you're targeting, etc. Maybe we can start with that.
Super. So I'm Jennifer. I'm Mexican. I think that almost everybody calls me Jen. I'm a woman. I'm in Mexico City. I'm a mother. I have two daughters, which are like everything for me in the world. Um, I major in computer science, engineering and computer science, but I haven't been working directly with computers, like developing or creating something since, I don't know, maybe 15 years. I have been working in sales, technology sales, but sales at the end. And nothing, yes, I started doing consultancy like a little bit more than 3 years ago. I think last year wasn't full time. The other two, I was full time consultant. Uh, I think the movement was pretty organic, uh, pushed by a very heavy crisis that I had, like emotional crisis. So I found in consultancy a lot of space to do the things at my own pace. And I think that that's pretty much all. That's me.
Amazing. And I think we were discussing this before, but one question that the audience already had was what pushed you into this move of from like big corporate, big tech into startups. I'm curious to hear about that story as well.
Um, well, was pretty funny because yes, I had worked. I think in the main tech companies, I had been at Salesforce, at SAP, at Oracle, at Broadcom, and the last one was Google. When Google Cloud was entering the Latin American market, so was pretty. And I realized that I was pretty much doing a startup within a big tech company for a lot of years. I mean, since Broadcom, at Oracle. So when I get to Google, it was purely startup, quoted because we had the last name of Google, so it was kind of easy. But then I get the call from Yalo CEO Javier Mata. The project was pretty interesting, but I was very afraid because being at the company is super comfortable. There's a lot of glamour. It's I don't know. It's a really good life. But somebody told me go and try, and if you don't like it, you come back. So I made the jump, and was the greatest experience of my life. Professionally, it was the most significant experience I have had, the space in which I have learned the most. And after that, it was super easy to move from one another. And then I found the space to make consultancy because I think one constraint that it's very common in startups is money. So, I mean, paying a full-time experienced person is very complicated. So I found that space to do consultancy and has been great.
Amazing. And let's go back maybe like over 3 years ago, since what you mentioned. But how was that first story of getting your first gig, right? What kind of led to this transition? You talked about this maybe like crisis, which I believe all of us are like
Yeah.
over 10 years of experience, most of us in Landa. And I think that's very common, right? But like, tell us maybe a little bit about that story and how did it appear as an option? And I guess like, what was the story getting your first client? I feel that that might be super interesting for the community.
Yes. Well, I was personally going into a very huge crisis. I mean, I lost a very important person in my life. So I
Yeah.
stopped doing full-time job. I was needing urgently a break. But when I had that break, I was like, okay, I need a break, but I cannot be doing like nothing, right? I think conversational market at that moment was pretty young. So at Yalo, we did I think a very decent job getting the market. And somebody related to that market like contact me and said, okay, why don't you start working with us like full time? And I was like, no way, I cannot go full time, but I can help. So we find a way to make it part time. And I started learning a lot, because one thing I have learned is consultancy services has a huge bias, because people think about these big consultative firms, right? Accenture and McKinsey, and projects in which you deliver like books of millions of pages of things that sounds amazing, but then making that a reality, it's complicated. So I started calling that like part-time, and I was assigning blocks of my week saying, okay, I will work with you on Mondays and Wednesdays, 3 hours a day. But organically, you need to structure that. What will we achieve? What are we pursuing? What you need to deliver? So we started like that. So my first client, I was not looking for them, but the real challenge came when I decided to, okay, I will do this professionally, and then I have to go outside and look for some customers, right? And it was pretty funny, because I do consultancy for sales. I have been doing sales for a long time, but it's not the same to sell a product, a tech product, than going outside to sell a service, which seems more like advisory based on your experience. So I think, I don't know, I have maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I have a one-on-one with somebody in the community, and I was sharing with her that I don't know if it's because of my background, but I tend to sell products again. It's like I won't do like this open project to see what happens. It's like, what do you need to solve? Maybe the productivity of your team, the accuracy of your pipeline, the accuracy of your forecast, how you will, I don't know, like launch a sales team in a new region to increase sales. And I try to sell like a bundle, saying, okay, this is the objective. It will take us 3, 4, 5 weeks. This is a fixed price, and we won't do anything outside of what we are doing.
That makes sense. And I think it's super curious, because as you can imagine, every founder wants to sell more, right? So as you can imagine, when I'm talking to a lot of B2B clients, that's the first thing that comes up. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts, after a couple of years, of what sales aspects can and cannot be outsourced. I'm curious to hear your take on this one, because you mentioned so many things, right? But the reality is that there's certain lines of this can be done by external or supported by external, and some things need to be full-time. So tell us about your experience, what cannot be done this way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of planning and structure that definitely can be outsourced. It's like nobody is like inventing the wheel. Like sales has a very like repetitive way to make it. I specialize on B2B sales. So, I mean, there's a way, of course, there's a value within what you are doing, what you are selling, that it's different from one customer to another. But for example, building a value proposal, it's pretty much the same structure. You have to change the ingredients of the cake, but it's pretty much the same. Structuring a team, same things. It's like, depends on your market, you will adjust the team in one way or another. Executing, it's very complex if it's outsourced, because people is focused on several things. So if you want somebody that is focused only on your business, and you are trying to do above 100% of your business, you need somebody that is full-time. In sales, I think that more people is not the solution to sell more. Like, you need to be effective, you need to be efficient, and it's more worthy to invest in a good value proposition than having an army of salespeople trying to sell something that has no value.
And that makes sense. And would you say that's the number one mistake you're seeing, like potentially not having a clear value proposition, or what
Yes.
are you seeing as that common thread? Value
Yes.
proposition.
Yes, definitely. It's like when I work with the startups, it's like, but what are you selling? To whom are you selling that? And it's like everybody struggles like stating clearly, I'm trying to sell these, or they are trying to solve a lot of problems. And it's like, if you're trying to do everything, you are doing nothing. So
That makes sense. Has there been a situation in which you've had to have like those hard conversations of like, hey, founder X, you might be doing like too many things? How do those usually go for you? Because I feel like it touches a nerve. It's hard to hear that feedback. So I'm curious to hear maybe like one experience where this has happened. That would be interesting for the group.
yes, well, I don't know. Maybe in my last experience that I'm very like near to that experience now. That happens. It's like you're trying to reach conversational, but validation, but signature is like, okay, you have a mixture. You have a lot of products, and also you need to have a consistent pitch, because if you are selling products and you have more than one, you are in trouble. You need to build a value proposition for each, or you need to make a value proposition of the conjunction of several products. But then the value proposition is above the products and it's about the solution. But what are you trying to do? And that's complex. When in a company you have more than one product, generally the product managers will pull for their product. This is more important. No, this is more important. No, it has more value. And you need to start like making a mix to have only one value proposition, or decide to go only for one product. And usually that's complex, and that's not even sales as execution, right? But I think that, I don't know, for those ones that are in sales and go-to-market definition here, one good question that I almost always do to the teams is, what you want to achieve? Where is the market? How you want to go? Because there's no right or wrong. Maybe right thing to do is to quit, like, and drop one or two products and focus in one, and that's perfect. Or mix it and create a value proposition of the mixed solution. And depends a lot on the market, right? What are you doing? The product is disruptive or not? It's trying to compete in a very crowded market, then you need to put something that help you to go above. And that happens. I mean, I have been in companies in which the 3 or 4 products they have are in very competitive markets. They are not even with a product that itself is above of the average of the market, but the mix of those solutions, having everything in your portfolio, makes a huge difference. Then your value proposition must be the mixture of those products, because if you are focused on products, you will lose all the battles on the field. So and again, it's like, and many times founders are thinking, well, I want to sell more, and it's like, yes, but selling more is not an objective, it's a consequence. It's a consequence of a good strategy. It's a consequence of a great go-to-market definition, those kind of things.
This resonates too much. So I'm taking notes. Thanks, Jen. And I want to switch a little bit to expansion as well, right? Because you're focusing on sales, but also go to markets. And since a lot of us, I think all of us here are in Latin America, I wanted to ask, what are some of those misconceptions you're seeing about maybe teams in the US, Europe, moving to these sort of regions, which naturally tend to have maybe lower willingness to pay? Tell us a little bit more about like that strategy, because I know you've worked with kind of many regions, many teams. So what are those things that you're seeing where they might be a little bit more averse to enter the market? What are kind of those conversations you're having as well?
Yeah, well, it depends. I think, for example, in the US, a lot of Americans now understand that, or at least they recognize that we have different cultures. So it's like, okay, this is different market. I need to understand the culture. I think Latin America has a huge focus on culture at the moment of making business. Almost, I think that almost all the companies I have worked with that are outside of Latin America are thinking about Mexico and Brazil because of the size of the economies, but failed a lot because of the cultures. They think that, yeah, okay, we will do like business exactly the same way, and it doesn't happen. Not because of the business, not because of the need, because of the people. Like it's not that easy to understand that Mexico makes business in a certain way, different than Colombia, different than Peru, different. So other common mistake, they see us like as a huge single piece, and they try to put the same strategy for Mexico, for Colombia, for Brazil, and it's like, no, stop. You need to differentiate those strategies. I think many of them struggle with the willingness to pay because they are not used to negotiate that hard. And in Latin America, it's common. I mean, it's like something is wrong if you are not negotiating. It's like, no, something is happening wrong here. It's like it will fail at the end. They don't have interest. Something is happening if they are not negotiating. It's a bad sign. That is one. Something that is super funny for me is we in Mexico have a phrase that is, we don't say no, right? In Mexico.
You say
But
gracias.
but we don't say when. And that's how you realize that they are saying no. Like if you say yes, but you don't say when, it's a no. For sure. Because it won't happen. And these kind of particular things are complex. And it comes to culture because many times leadership is outside of the country and they hire somebody to execute sales, for example, in Mexico. And the disconnection of the culture is important. And I have found many of founders outside Latin America that I think, no, they are Mexicans or Brazilians or Colombians or whatever. It's like, no, they are lying to me. It's like, no, they are not lying to you. It's the way the culture goes. And you need to understand. It's like, because they are connecting with the customers. But I think that sometimes it's hard, but they take like one situation or maybe two and they realize, right? And it's like, okay, let's go back. Let's review what the team said, what you said at the beginning, and we will take this and we will like reshape the strategy.
Makes a lot of sense. And something that I've heard a lot of founders kind of think as well is, if I have a SaaS business, maybe like a heavy tech platform business, I could just turn on a bottom and expand, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on this kind of misconception? I guess like a follow-up question to that would be, when do you believe there should be local representation, right? Like somebody representing the company who actually understands the culture. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that process, because I've heard this misconception a lot of times. There's like different ideas. I would love to hear yours.
Yeah. I don't know. Within the things I do, one of the first things I assess with my clients is the kind of product they have. It's like, because of the product, you are, targeting transactional sales or consultancy sales or disruptive sales. And the three of them have a different way to sell. So if it is SaaS, but you are more in the transactional side, yes, you can go faster because I mean, you can go faster because it's easier to put it in the market. Also, it's easier to replace the product. So to sell the first, it will be easier than the other two, but you have to do a huge effort in customer success. I mean, to have some stickiness, to have the customer, this recurrency in the customer for avoiding a churn, right? If you are doing more like consultancy selling, then the time to sell will be longer. But once you sell, it's more difficult for the customer to churn. So many times when you ask that to the founders, and many of them does not come from sales background, it's like, oh, okay. Like they sit down and try to analyze in which situation they are. And that will lead you to a go-to-market conversation if they don't have that clear, or if they have that clear, to understand, I mean, where they are, how can they move forward. Because if you are doing like more consultancy selling, you will need somebody that understands the culture, right? And then you have like different strategies. Maybe you partner with somebody, a local company, and you will share the revenue with them. And once you are mature, then you can acquire your own team and try to do that, right? If you are being very, very disruptive, I think many times a good move is having the founder spending some time in the region, because it's the person that knows the most, that can explain better this disruptive pitch, that has the passion to do it. So it's like, maybe the best advice is go there, spend 2 or 3 months there, get some customers, get some people as excited as you, so they follow like the idea.
Could not agree more. Amazing. I guess I wanted to go a little bit back, because obviously it's been over 3 years for you, but I wanted to go to the starting position, or maybe put yourself in the starting position for a second, because a lot of people in Landa obviously are in the 0 to 2 clients phase. So I wanted to just do this a little bit more interesting for them. But I'm curious to hear, 3 years in, what advice would you give somebody starting in defining their value proposition? You mentioned this is the most common mistake for companies, but also, as you go into a solopreneur business, you are the actual client, you are the actual business, right? So curious to hear your thoughts on how to land that particular value proposition that sticks with clients.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, I have a little framework that I will try to summarize here.
Please do.
But I think one of the most important things is what problem you are trying to solve. And you will go naturally to the question, what one problem you are trying to solve. If you are trying to solve more than one problem, you will be in trouble. Because like it's starting like to divide, and it has no consistency. And for whom you are trying to solve that problem. Because otherwise it's like you are trying to shoot everything and won't work. Like in my case, for example, it's like I do sales and go-to-market consultancy for tech companies, startup tech companies that are focused on B2B. That's the space. And when you and mostly in consultancy, when you show that kind of expertise, is easier for the people not to get into the price, because then you're not selling hours, you are selling a solution. I don't know how many of you here, but when I started, a mistake that I made, it was like saying, okay, it will take like 4 weeks. I have 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. Then I have 40 hours a week for by 4 weeks. Okay, beautiful. I had a pricing, and I showed that to the customer. And the first thing they told me is like, well, if you're doing it in 4 weeks, maybe you can make it in 3 weeks. And then the price went, and it was like, no way, right? So now I sell, I mean, close solutions. What we will solve? Okay, we will solve your forecast accuracy. Perfect. I need 3 weeks to do that. I will need A, B, C, D, blah, blah, from you. And you can expect this by the first week, this by the second week, and this by the third week. And it's an approximation, right? So, I mean, not having price per hour, because that was, I mean, at the beginning, that was killing me. I learned a lot on admin stuff because I used to sell, but my responsibility when I was selling at corporate was having a signed contract that I put in a system. And what happened then, it was not my problem. But then I realized doing consultancy that you have to have a good contract. You need to have a very well-written NDA in which you have specified intellectual property, for example, because I am sharing my experience and I'm also gaining experience at working with you. And there's no way in which I will like forget what I have learned here. I will not share your confidential numbers. I won't share your confidential details of your products, but the experience is mine. I learned a lot about making good financial decisions. It's like at least split the payment 50% in advance, 50% at the end, and that 50% should cover 80% of your cost. Because the first projects, it was like, for me, it was super frustrating saying, okay, I did an amazing job. This person was super happy with what I did, but then it took like 90 days for them to pay me. And I was like, I'm not financing like anybody. Like I did already my job. And I had to be like following up a lot week over week to get my payment. I think in that side, it's where I have had the most frustrating experiences. But I learned. It was like, okay, if this customer will take another 90 days to pay me the other 50% of my project, at least with the first 50%, I will survive, right? Generating pipeline, it's another. And I think that many of us, I mean, we are only one person, right? So we need to have a lot of rhythm, because if you generate pipeline, but you don't close like consistently, you will have very huge spaces with no customers and then peaks, like weeks in which you have like 5 or 6 customers and you cannot attend all of them. So, but that's like knowing yourself, like understanding, okay, if I said I will do this project in 3 weeks, I'm really doing it in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks and a half, in more than 3 weeks, when I should be generating another opportunity, how many opportunities I'm converting from what I have. Because yes, and I have been in that situation. It's like, it was a period of time in which I had a lot of customers and I was not able to attend them. And saying no or saying yes and not being able to deliver on time was worse than not having customers.
It makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense to me. I guess on that same topic, which is time management, I know a lot of us struggle with it, especially if we're moving to like very structured organizations to being on our own. I guess like, what are some tips that you would give people to handle these situations? Have you run into a situation, for example, in this case, where you've had peaks in which you may have considered hiring other people for your consulting practice? How did you, I guess, like handle those, or how would you recommend somebody else, having these thoughts or like having these like practices?
Yeah, for me it was key, and because I didn't have that habit, like writing down everything on the calendar. I mean, the time I have daughters, so it's like I will drop my daughters at school from this time to from this hour to this hour. I will have lunch here. I mean, for time management stuff, because I tend to forget a lot of things and then get into trouble because, oh my God, it's like I overbooked this or that. I think one good advice is get to know yourself. I mean, everybody knows what you really don't like. For example, for me, admin stuff, it's very complicated, right? It's like booking tickets, making invoices. So I outsource that. Like I have a person, I get to an agreement, and she works with me a couple of hours per week, but she's doing all that like back office um, tasks that I don't do. It's like invoicing, getting tickets. I suck at reporting taxes, so that's also outsourced, right? It's like I have a monthly balance, and I trust that. I haven't had any issues until now, but those kind of things, or maybe following up in things like, I don't know, I take note on projects that I started with certain kind of service, and I know that can grow, or they can take another or a different package of services. I send to her this list and say, okay, send them an email to follow up. Maybe they need this. So I mainly use my time to do those things that nobody else can do, right? It's like doing consultancy, pure consultancy, working on structuring some definition for a company.
Amazing. So take notes in your calendar freak. I fully agree. Play to your strength, delegate, take notes, right? A lot of very, very good stuff. I guess,
Sorry for it, but I
go ahead, please.
that it's really important is having a good network, because I like learned the value of that. Maybe the people that it's, I don't know, in Mexico, like I think taxes everywhere are complicated, but in Mexico it was like I get my accountant from a recommendation of a friend, because I was suffering with that. And when I start opening, like, I'm having this problem, and they say, okay, he's already working with me, and it was very fast. I mean, he did a fast track understanding that this lady that is working with me, same thing. She was a recommendation, and because I was like complaining with a friend saying, I hate do collections. I don't like it. But there's people that enjoy that, and with me, she was like, I will do that for you. So it was great. And I think when we open and we share these things that maybe like seems like silly or very simple, I mean, they have a huge impact.
Totally agree. And then that's a good segue, because obviously we have the honor of having you in our community as well. But curious to hear, you mentioned the importance of network sharing, kind of your needs, etc. What's been the role of community for you, I guess, in the success of your consulting practice? I'm curious to hear if you're also part of other network groups, and also I heard you built a B2B sales community as well. So I'm curious to hear, what's been the importance for you in accessing these private groups?
Yeah, no, for me has been key. I mean, for many aspects. And there are some groups in which I have found some leads, for example, like maybe a recommendation, or I heard they have this problem, call them. But everything, it's not only like leads, it's about these kind of things, right? Or learning from others. I mean, there are some peers here in Landa that we have shared these kind of things. It's like maybe as having a sounding board, like I'm having this problem where I have a challenge with this. I would come here, like, listen to me, what's happening, what like, well, yes, I have seen this in this way or whatever. Yeah, I love communities. I mean, I'm part of a women community in Latin America, of founders and people in startups. I made a B2B sales community. And I don't know, when we started the community, one of the things, or one of the objectives, was having a break at the end of the quarter to cry together, right? That was all.
You need them.
So I mean, it's fantastic. Whenever I can go and share, like give and receive from my community, it's something I will take for sure.
Amazing. And also, I guess you were just we're getting towards the end, so I'm going more about the future, and maybe we'll have a couple quick questions. Jen, this has been great, by the way.
Thank
But
you.
I'm curious to hear, you've started a little bit earlier than most people in Latin America. What have you seen in terms of like trends for fractional work, consulting in general in these 3 years? What are you seeing evolving? What do you expect to change in the future? I'm curious to hear your thoughts because you've been doing this 3 years. Again, you're one of the pioneers. Congrats. So yeah, that would be super interesting to get your take.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's moving that way. I mean, now more than ever, it's like I have seen a lot of opportunities of part work, right? It's like to do partial stuff. Uh, I think that teams are going hybrid, like having these full-time persons to do the things that needs full-time, and the others like getting out the equation to give value. With the development and the fast growing pace that startups had in Latin America, it's also crazy. Also, companies coming from outside to Latin America to understand. I mean, it's not it's not economically possible to hire a team of 10 senior persons in X thing for anybody. So they are taking a lot of that. Not even startups. I have seen that also with big companies, uh, Microsoft, Cisco. They are doing those kind of things. It's like they hire for a part of time a group that will help them to redefine. I mean, whatever, right? For big companies, this experience on fast growing companies, it's super important. Like, I don't know, when I get to Yellow in, I don't know, 5 6 years ago, it was important for startups to get somebody with corporate experience to boost the growth. Now it's going the other way around. Are big tech companies hiring people that has been working at startups to help them like figure out how to do a faster growth? So I think it's now it's blending. I have seen more more now in these days, like very open hiring schemas. A lot of companies open to say you are not full-time employee, you will be doing consultancy, and it really works. I still see a huge bias against the word consultancy. So I try to use a lot of advisory, a lot of solution, surveys, something that is very focused and has a very clear deliverable. But yeah, I think it's moving. And if you search, outside Latin America, I think that you will find a lot of good opportunities. A lot of companies trying to understand what happens here.
That's a great tip, by the way. Just wanted to close off, Jen, with a couple quick questions, if that's okay. More about you, so people can get to know you a little bit better. Starting with, do you have any favorite books or book that you recommend the most? Maybe it's around sales, maybe it's something completely different.
Yeah. Well, I do. Of course, I have a lot of sales books, but I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. So Start With Why is something I really enjoy. I think that it works and fits every scenario of life. Um, I like Atomic Habits because for me, it changed the way I see a lot of things. Um, I go from, I was a tennis player, I think a decent tennis player for a but then I wanted to do like Spartans and these kind of things, and it was like a very aggressive move, a physical move from one thing to another. And in 10 months it was like, yeah, it worked, and I did it based on Atomic Habits. It was like my thesis around the book, and it worked. So I really like that. I really like the perspective of Simon Sinek. I think in general for life, but to Start With Why, for me, it's like a clear way to say if you are not committed with the why, it, it it's like very complicated for you to do it.
Makes total sense and very aligned to the conversation, by the way. I guess moving to habits, the second question was around, do you have any habits that kind of change your life? It could be sports, it could be anything that has worked for you a lot.
Uh, Definitely. When I moved to be the calendar freak, like my life changed. Right? It's like I know I train every day like 4:30 in the morning. So and for me it's like it's the pace of my life. It allows me to do a lot of things, to have my daughters, to be at home, to do my job. Um, I think personally, I think that exercising is key for everybody. It's not only about physic, it's health, it's mental health beyond everything. So
Agree. I agree. And then last one, maybe a little bit more philosophical, but what would be something you'd like to be remembered for, Jen? When you go, it's like, I remember Jen because of this.
wow, I don't know. I don't know. And maybe that's why I started at first working on a Latin American startup. And I'm convinced fully that the culture and the talent we have in Latin America can change the world. And what is happening right now, it's proving that. So if I remember that I am part of this generation in Latin America that will change how we see the world, I will be very happy.
I love that. I think that's an amazing close, Jen. Thanks so much for your time.